Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season where we're looking at items for Python certification. This episode, we are going to look at exceptions. Now, I got a little bit ahead of myself on that, so I'll sort of walk through instead of coding as I often do. So, the way an exception works in Python is you have a try, and then you have an except. And try basically says, I'm going to try this code. And except says, if I have a certain type of error, or if I have an error, depending on how you work it, then I'm going to do something. Now, the simple example here is we're going to go in, we're going to ask the user to input a number, and we're going to convert it to an int. And then we're going to just print out, hey, you entered X. So, or, whatever it is that you entered. Now, what we're going to do here is, and let me actually do it first without the try block. So normally what would happen, if I can get here, there we go. So normally it's going to say, please, oops, sorry. So let's do this. So normally it's going to say enter a number, and you enter it. But if I enter a non-number, then I'm going to get this value error, invalid literal, because I'm trying to do that int. So what I can do is now, since that is, where did that go? See here, that was a value error. So now I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to do something with that. In this case, I'm going to do, actually, let's not, well, we'll leave it as a try again because I'm going to fix that in a second. But so right now, then it's going to say, hey, instead of giving a value error, now, so the first one, if I enter a 3, it enters a 3. If I do an A, it's going to say, oops, that was not a number, try again. So now I have a clean and developer intentioned error as opposed to just it blows up. Now what we can do with this is that we could turn around and we could say, so now we could actually, with this, if you remember a break, because I'm in a while loop now, and a break just says get out of that while loop. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say enter a number and either say you entered and be done with the loop, or I'm going to ask you to do it again. So now I have a much cleaner. So if I do a 3, if I do a 3, then it's fine. If I do an A, oops, try again. Okay, let's try a G. Nope, let's do this. Nope, but if I do a number, then boom. So now I've got some logic and I've got a little more stability with my application. Now, one of the things we might want to do in this one is, because we're in this while loop, what we could do is we could take the break out and have them enter a whole bunch of them. But that means then what we're going to want to do is we're going to pick up the keyboard interrupt. Now, if I do, and I'll show you how I got that. Well, actually, I got it because you can look stuff up. But also, so let's just run it like this. Except for I'm not going to, let's do it without catching the interrupt. And it's going to catch value error. But now it's just going to bail out because it doesn't tell me what that exception was. I was thinking it would. It doesn't, because it's going to bail out. But now I can catch actually specifically the keyboard interrupt, which normally is going to get passed up to the operating system and break out. Now what I can do is, let's see, so if I do this, I'm just checking this because this while true could be an infinite loop and could be a pain, and especially when you're dealing with keyboard interrupt. So I want to make sure that if I get it and it works, it's going to ask me again. If I don't, if I have a value, it asks me something else, and if I get an interrupt, then it's going to exit the loop. Okay. Let's clear this for a second. So now if I enter a number, see, it's going to keep asking me to enter a number. If I enter a letter, it's going to say try again. And if I hit Control C, now it's going to fall into that Control C exiting loop. So now I've picked up the keyboard interrupt. So you can actually stack errors. You can have multiple exceptions. You can have multiple exceptions that you handle specifically. Now, another thing you can do is that you can have a straight out except. So let's do it this way. Let's just do except, and then we'll just do an error occurred. Whoops, if I spell it right. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now what I can do is I don't have to, if I don't know it, I can just say, all right, I'm either going to, it probably doesn't like that. Oh, so it does now like one or more handlers. So what I would have to do here is I can just say exception, which is the base essentially, or base exception. Well, it doesn't like that. Three, two, one. I'm sorry, that's a warning and not a problem. So I can go back to this. And now if I hit a number, I'm fine. Oh, because I'm in that while loop. If I hit a letter, it's just going to say an error occurred. And now I have to break out of this thing because I killed it. So pardon me a second. So I did get into my infinite loop there. As I said here, I didn't have a break on it. So it would just catch an error and it would just keep me in that infinite loop. So let's do this. Now, it goes in order. Let me bring that screen back up real quick first. It goes in order from top to bottom. So that generic exception, let's play with that a minute. So if we go to that generic exception, if I can type, okay. Oh. So if we do just a generic exception, let's do this. So if we just do except here, so this is going to take anything, and then we're going to say, oh, actually now we're going to get an error because you're going to see that actually this one's going to say we're going to get errors because we will never actually hit these guys. It starts with, it goes in order and it says, okay, everything's going to hit this because it is a generic. However, if I shift order, then I say, hey, I've got these specific ones, and if I don't catch, if I've got any kind of other error, then I'm going to break out, or then I'm going to handle that exception. So we'll just call it, let's do uncaught exception. Now another thing we can do is let's do. We'll keep it like that, and then we'll just pick this one. So now let's do this. So now let's do a different try. So we're just going to try print new example. And let's do int 345. Hey, let's just do that. And then it's going to blow up. But this time what we're going to do, I don't need the break, is that we're actually going to take that exception, whatever it is, and we're going to use it, and we can call it whatever we want, but we're going to just say as this thing. So let's just say exception. We'll do it that way because it's a little more. And you may use E. Sometimes people do that based on the other languages they've done. So let's see what happens here when I try and play with that one. Oh, that's right. So let's see. So I can break out of that. Oh, here we go. And so the new example, see, it says invalid literal, and that's what was print. Actually, I probably should do this. Print. Let's do it this way so it's a little easier to read. And we're just going to do args. Let's see how that works out. Okay. No, whatever that was. Okay, so here we go. Where is exception message in here? Oh, but see, this is another. Oh, because I can't do that. So I'm sorry, because it's not going to. Oh, because it's not. I've got to convert this to a string. My mistake. So I got an exception and an exception, which really blew things up. Okay, let's see what that does. So now when we break out, we see, so we come into new example, and we have this exception message that comes through because we've got it. And so you can see here this exception message. It says invalid literal. So that's the message that I got with the base 10. So that's actually what happened. If I look at the arguments, then you can see here that the only arguments that I had for the exception is just the one, which is basically just the message. But now I can do with that, actually let's do the same thing. Let's see, let's do arg example. And I can do a thing called raise. And I want this to be, so 1, 2, 3. Let me space that just so it doesn't complain at me. So now, if I raise, it's going to actually throw an exception. And so now I can come in and oh, here we go. So then it's going to come in. So new example, arg example. Exceptions must derive from base exceptions. So I can do let's do, so I have to give it one. And so I'm going to do three, two, one. So I want to give it actually, in this case, I have to actually tell it, I'm sorry, I can't just raise, I have to tell it the exception type. And so now if I do that, break out. So here, my exception was this message. So I could also do, let's do my exception name. And, oh, let's see. Oh, that's not a name. That's my exception. And it's going to be, let's see, a name and a code. And this is going to come from this exception. 3, 2, 1. Wait, let's make this an exception. Blah, blah, blah. So it does that. And then what I can do is I can do raise my exception. It's going to be, let's see, negative 23. Name, it's going to just call it Henry. And then 3, 2, 1. And let's get rid of it. Let's see. This is going to be the name and the code. And we're going to do name and code. So if we look at this one, so now we're raising a my exception. And we can actually do, we can leave it as exception, but we're going to actually do specifically a my exception. And let's do this. And we'll see here that the args now come across as that. And we can actually do print name and do exception.name. Actually, we could do it like this. So we could do, so for that one, we'll do it that way. Let's do it this way. We'll just do this one. So we can do name and we can do code. And we can actually work with those individually. Break out of that. And so we can see here that the name is Henry and the code is negative 23. So we could actually do some pretty complicated exceptions if we need to, and we can build on them. We could log information. We could do whatever we needed to. But the key is for this one really is just to know that there's a try and accept. You can have multiple accepts. That there is a generic. Essentially, there's a catch-all, which would be just an accept this. Now we do have. Let's see. Well, I think we'll go with that. Three, two, one. Well, we do have one other thing, and so we can do a. Where do I want to put it? I'm going to put it here. We also have a finally, which means regardless of what we do, we're going to call the finally. Oh, let me get rid of that. So what we could do is we could say, we're going to try this, and no matter what, we're going to break out of the loop. Something's going to happen, and we're going to break out of the loop. So now if we do that, we can see if we enter a number, now, boom, it breaks out of the loop. If we enter a letter, boom, it breaks out of the loop. If we do Control C, boom, it breaks out of the loop. So this always gets called. So we have our key pieces of exceptions. As we have try, we catch some exceptions, one or more. Finally says, hey, we're going to do this no matter what, whether there's a exception or not. And then we can also raise exceptions. So we can come in and do our own. So we could do something like a number too low exception, or value too high, or something along those lines. And we're, for example, let's say a customer ID. We could have something. We'd have a customer bad ID exception that we raise that basically says if somebody gives us a bad ID, we always do this. We always follow this logical path. So that is exceptions in Python, and that'll wrap it up for this one. So as always, if you have any questions, shoot an email to info@developaneur.com. There will be The repository will have examples of this in the exceptions.py file that's out there, and you can see links in the show notes. But as always, go out there, have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.